Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another podcast for Islam for Europeans. I'd like to welcome my guest, Maarten Van Elst. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
You came close.
Okay. All right. Cool. I got to work on my Dutch. From the Netherlands. Which city are you from, Maarten?
I'm from the best city of Rotterdam, best city of the Netherlands, Rotterdam.
Okay. Nice. Very nice. And Maarten converted to Islam recently. And so when did you convert to Islam, Maarten?
Well, maybe compared to you recently, but I converted in 2011, so almost 10 years. In 2 months, 3 months, I go to my 10th year of Islam. Alhamdulillah.
Nice. Alhamdulillah. Congratulations. It's it's not an easy path. It's not incredibly difficult too. I mean, there are people who will help you along the way, but rather than starting with, we always get the question, how did you find out about Islam? And you have to repeat the story over and over and over again. But let's start with your first 10 years of being a Muslim. What were some of the challenges and what were, some of the things that helped you along the way? What would you have told your younger self, if you were able to go back to 2011 and tell your just converted Maarten, like what pitfalls to avoid and what to do instead?
Yeah, very, very good question. Well, at first I was 18 when I converted. So besides that Islam was new and my knowledge was little, there was also puberty still. So I always find it hard to see where my naive stands towards Islam and my rebellious teenage years start and end. So, alhamdulillah, I was very fortunate when I became Muslim because when I started researching Islam, I only knew one guy, and I really learned Islam through literature. So I was I really became Muslim because I was out of theological conviction, so really a rational decision. But after that, I was very fortunate to be adopted by a group of guys from my age who were very active in their religion. So I always say that throughout the years, I've been active in the field of Dawah, so preaching Islam and helping new converts. And I find very little converts that were so fortunate as me to have such a supportive and well diverse group of friends, because there wasn't, for example, one dominant ethnicity in the group. We had Afghans, we had Moroccans, we had Turkish, we had Libyans, we had Tunisians, with all kinds of guys. So I found Islam in a rational way, and after I converted, because I had such a diverse friend group, I wasn't really pushed into some ethnic interpretation of Islam. So
Nice.
I always say I could really find my own way in Islam. But if I look, okay, what were my pitfalls and what were my challenges, is that even then, because you're young and everybody who finds something new that's exciting, that's very desirable, you get a lot of enthusiasm and motivation. And I did, especially in the beginning, kind of lost my identity of who am I. And we always joke here in the Netherlands that all the converts have their Arab teenage years. that for a few years they think they're Arab, and then they calm down and they remember that they're Dutch again. I think that's very similar in other communities.
True.
So I think the biggest my biggest advice to a younger self, to new converts, is to really think, okay, who am I? What's my culture? What's my identity? And remembering that Islam is an religion and not an ethnic, it's not an ethnic group, and especially that Islam is very diverse. So there is not like an Islamic culture, for example. So I think that's the biggest takeaway, that I don't have to turn Arab to be a practicing Muslim.
Yep. Oh no, I kind of went through the same similar thing, and I had a very good group of friends too, and I converted as well, and they were up from all different nationalities. The mosque in Windsor, was what we call an umbrella mosque, where you have, like you said, Turks and Arabs and Pakistanis and Somalis. So you see that it's a very multicultural place. But like you said, at the same time, you're the only, usually, especially on the men's side, you're the only, white convert there. And it's difficult to fit in. So you're kind of, you're a full brother in the sense that you're all Muslim, but at the same time, you're kind of an observer at the same time as well. Which poses some challenges, but alhamdulillah, we give a lot of credit to the people who helped us along the way, because they definitely, had our best interest in it for us, and they tried their best, and they wanted us to succeed as converts. But you probably, and I think you alluded to this before, when you answered the questions, that it's not so much that we had so many pitfalls, that we saw other converts that fell into those pitfalls as well. So it's true. A lot of converts, when they do convert to Islam, they try to absorb into a completely different culture in order to try to fit in. Whereas what should have happened is that, the both the Muslim community and the converts should have, tried to say, okay, like, for the people here who are indigenous, who converted here, they should form some sort of combined or integrated Muslim Dutch identity or Canadian Muslim identity. And that's, kind of the challenge that we have here. So I don't think I don't know. I don't think that ever existed as a concept in my head, or in anyone's head, until, quite recently. For the first decade of me being Muslim, I never really thought that could be an actual possibility. So, I mean, when did you sort of come to this realization, Maarten? Like, was there like a light bulb moment in your head that popped up that said, maybe we should have done things a little bit differently?
Good question. Yeah, it really came gradually. It wasn't like a manifestation of some sorts. Like I said, I live in Rotterdam, and Rotterdam is one of the most diverse cities in the Netherlands. And we also have a quite blooming Islamic community here. And I'm very fortunate that there is an Islamic center here in Rotterdam, which is founded by converts.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So I was, even before they officially opened, I was already involved. Like I said, like I think it was like as soon as like 1 year, 1.5 years after I converted, I already started to be active in Dawah organizations. And if I try to think back, I don't really know how I ended up in them. I think I'm quite an extrovert guy, and I lay connection with people very easily. So I think I just connected with some people, and what's interesting is that we have a few converts here in the Dawah organizations that are active. So when I saw like fellow Dutch guys, I automatically was really attracted to seeing a fellow countryman, and not countryman, but somebody who shares your identity. So I think that was the first. Now, while looking back, I don't think it went. It really went consciously, but I think the first trigger was that I noticed when I saw somebody from my own cultural and ethnical background, I got very enthusiastic. And when I saw, like when I was in an event or in a different country and I saw somebody in the mosque, you see another white guy, you're straight to that guy, giving salam, trying to lay a connection. So I think unconsciously, that was the first trigger. Like, okay, I feel at home in the Muslim community, but I feel more at home when I'm with fellow Dutchmen. And I think secondly was just being in that mosque, because it's a very neutral mosque, kind of umbrella, like you said, and they really founded it as like, it is like an they call, I don't really know how to translate it correctly to English, but it's an easygoing mosque. For example, I would never take my mom to any random mosque, like a Turkish or Moroccan, because women and men are divided. So you just have to push your mothers in some entrance and just hope it goes well.
If they allow women at all.
If they allow women at all, indeed. So at this mosque, of course, women and men also segregated, but in a more, in a different way, as in they're not shocked. They have like a common entrance. They have different areas, but we have a common entrance. And I think because a lot of tension between men and women is also from cultural backgrounds. Because when I went to Bosnia or Malaysia on vacation, I saw that the man-woman interaction was very different. So in that center, we really try to release some of the tension, and not so much that we are friends or something, like you have female friends, but more like, okay, if a non-Muslim comes, if they come, and it's so low, easy going that even non-Muslims go in by themselves, even without somebody bringing them, because they just walk by, they see us, we chat. So we made an environment where it's possible that if somebody converted, they can bring their mom, and they don't have to push them in some entrance, you don't see them anymore. So I think when I was in that environment, the one of the founders, Jacob van der Blom, he's like a really old school convert. I think he's been Muslim for like 20, maybe 30, well, more than 20 years. He was also always jokingly saying, "Oh, you turned Arab now," you know. So it was a very gentle way of making me realize, okay, you don't have to wear a jalaba if you go out the street. You can just wear your jeans as long as they're not not skinny jeans and stuff. So I think it was some part was that it was new, and I was also a little bit rebellious because of my age. So wearing different clothes and maybe even going a bit for the shock factor to non-Muslim was maybe a bit out of rebellion. Like maybe I would become a punk kid if I wasn't Muslim. But that's why I said I always find it hard to see where my age and my being new to Islam starts and ends. But it was a gradual process, and just being with basically being with Dutch guys and feeling so at ease, and seeing that they're Muslim and they're just normal Dutch guys, that really helped. So I think it might have been, if I was like the only guy, it would be much more difficult. The only Dutch guy.
Yeah, I think some Muslims might be against this idea, and the reasoning that they give is that they think that we're quote unquote dividing the ummah, but really this is not about division. It's about realizing that converts and people born into Islam, even though we're all united and we're all brothers and sisters, we all have a totally different set of unique challenges and issues. So we can still pray and fast together, and give salams to each other on the street, and still be united in that way. But at the same time, I think they have to realize that this trying a cookie cutter approach, where converts just assimilate into a Muslim community, it hasn't been really that effective. And I think they start to realize that very over time, and say, what, maybe it's best if converts are sort of at the same time collectivized, but still be still connected to the Muslim community. But well, so I guess your mom, you took her to the mosque and she had a positive experience. Like your parents, like your family, like like what was your reaction when you converted to Islam? And was it?
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
good question. I converted during the start of the Arab Spring, and
Oh,
especially when Syria really started to kick off. So,
mm,
um, and I just moved out of the house. I went to study. I come from a small farmer village. I moved to Rotterdam to live in a student flat for us to be closer to my school.
mm,
So I think I was out of the house for like only a few months. Um, and it also, I don't know if that played a role, but I always wanted to join the army, like when I was a little kid. And I actually was, I even applied and I get through all the medical tests and stuff. And I was enlisted, but then, yeah, the economy crashed, and they, due to budget cuts, all the newly added soldiers were, um, don't know the English word, but basically fired due to
mm,
budget cuts. So I converted. I was out of the house, so they didn't see me anymore, and they
mm.
saw a lot of stories because it was a hot topic. Because not a lot, but quite a few Europeans went to Syria to join the fight there, and not some, and it was all before ISIS and those kind of stuff. So it was more the humanitarian guys who went. So,
Yeah.
and I was, like I told you, I Arabized somewhat. So all of a sudden, they saw their son move out of the house, uh, change religion, um, quite quickly make radical changes in his appearance, in his behavior, and in his morals and stuff. And of course, everybody, especially in the beginning, was really um, emotional about what happened in Syria and other areas, and and especially before all those terrorist and radicalist groups were there, because then it was still, even when the time like with Morsi was on the power, they even was some speak about an official jihad. So it was a little bit exciting in the time. I wasn't thinking about going, but of course, sometimes I made a post about what happens in Syria. So my parents in the beginning were very afraid that I would. Especially my dad was very afraid that I would go and join some radicalist group. And my relationship with my parents was really difficult until I married.
Mm,
When I married, because of course, when it's your son, there's a lot of emotions attached,
mm.
and you cannot preach to your parents because there's a hierarchy and
It's
you're on
true.
the lower end. So when I married, they saw Islam not as a single person as me, but they saw another Muslim for the first
Hmm.
time, and they saw my parents-in-law, and they behaved very nicely, alhamdulillah. So I think when I married, it was like 2 years after I converted.
Hmm.
Um, that really neutralized it a lot, and
Hmm.
after it even built the relation up very well. So um, have I not? If I wouldn't have married earlier or later, um, I don't know how we would settle it, because it was really
Hmm.
problematic. There was a lot of tension, a lot of emotions, and um, I also didn't really know how to handle it, because all new for me too, how
Yeah.
to approach my parents and stuff. So it was, especially in the beginning, it was very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to go too much into my past, but definitely when I ended up my first marriage is to another convert, and my family had no problem with me being Muslim, but she had converted on her own, and her family was totally opposed to it. And it wasn't until and you can't talk to them about Islam. I mean, even the mention of it, like it's such a taboo, and they don't want to hear about it. They just want it to be completely out of sight, out of mind. So a lot of the times for converts, especially ones, when when you have family members who are against it, the only way that you could allay their fears and have them, go from a negative 100 to like a negative 99 is to, be a good person, like show that Islam, respect, you're supposed to respect your parents, your ties of kinship, and then their hearts, inshallah, will start to soften. But that's very difficult to do as a single person. And like you said, I think, part of the thing that can really improve the situation, if, getting married, and especially that way they'll be able to see, how like, Islam encourages, a really good family dynamic, treating your wife well, if you're a woman, treating your husband well, like being good to your aunts, to your uncles. And, I think trying to talk to them about Islam, I mean, I've seen it before where, new converts will try to, bring it right up and say, hey, look into Islam and read about it. They don't want to hear anything about it. It's too much for them many times. I mean, it's very difficult for them to get them to go to a mosque, even if their image of Islam is neutral or positive. So, yeah, I mean, there are challenges to marriage, but at the same time, like, there's a lot of potential there in that, um, you know, um, converts, can be able to show the positive things in Islam in action without even having to say a word about Islam. So, no, I think, that's definitely one thing that we should look at. But also, there's a lot of challenges, with marriages too, and a lot of converts will get into marriages without properly looking into, things about compatibility. I mean, as you know, like in secular society, people date, so they try to figure out if this person is going to be compatible that way. But there's a lot of problems with doing that, and that, you many times fall into the same pitfalls. And, if you're blinded by love, you don't really see the differences. And then for Muslim families, a lot of them, the way that their structure is set up is that the family will look into, a potential spouse for them and investigate before they even meet. And that way they can look at things more objectively. And since they know their son or daughter very well, they can find someone who's more compatible. But as converts, we don't have either of those options because we don't date. And at the same time, we're going in blind, and, we're trying to find a spouse, without having a Muslim family. And, that I've seen it where there's been a lot of marriages that ended up in complete disasters. Have you seen
Yeah.
this? Did you see the same thing with other converts too, Martin? Is that something that you saw was common?
Yeah. I don't have the statistics, but
Yeah, that's the problem.
it's being said that converts have a pretty high divorce rate,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I think I always like if I look back at myself, it's really by Allah. It's always by Allah, but
Yeah.
it's not by my perfect preparation and my rational thinking that my marriage was successful. If looking back, how naive and young I was, because I was 20 when I married, and it was like indeed, like you said, my parents were not really much involved because I
Yeah.
was just almost 2 years Muslim, so it was the relation was still a bit difficult, and it didn't really make it better that I all of a sudden wanted to marry somebody I didn't know. So yeah, it was basically I was very alone trying to arrange my marriage, and I really did it in a traditional way. That alhamdulillah, my family-in-law, my in-laws are very very nice people, and they really helped a lot. But yeah, I wouldn't advise somebody to do it the same way as I did. I just became blessed and lucky. um, um, yeah, normally I would advise converts to first find their grounds before they marry, because I also changed a lot during my marriage, because I was still 2 years. I just converted 2 years ago, so I was still middle in my hardcore Arab days, going to my university with my jalaba on, and so alhamdulillah, my wife wasn't really a fan about it, so that was really nice, because if I would have married somebody who was like really into that, and I all of a sudden changed, that would have been a problem. But yeah, I changed a lot during my marriage, and alhamdulillah, my wife is very positive about the change that I made, and she likes it a lot, and she always makes fun of how I used to act when I was younger. But yeah, so it is a real obstacle and a danger for newly converted people who still have to find their way and how they want to interpret Islam, and how they want to combine their culture and their religion together. And if you do that during marriage, you might find out that you might start thinking differently about stuff than your partner, and that can create a big problem. And not even speaking about what we see a lot is there are a lot of converts that come into Islam by a relationship throughout, and it's even more. Those have what I know out of what I see is those have often a more higher divorce rate, because like I said, I don't have statistics, I didn't research it, but it's just what I saw. Because we see quite often that like somebody comes into Islam by a relationship, even something that's not the most halal way often. And then we see, at least the people I see, so it's a bit of a survivor bias because I see them in the mosque, but I see the person who converted that way starting to pick up the religion very seriously, and maybe their partner isn't. So I always advise new Muslims to first find their way and how they want to implement their new religion into their old life. Get rid of that's not allowed, but especially keep that what's allowed and even beneficial and praiseworthy. And I think what's really, really important is good counseling, good coaching for new converts. Like what we have in Dutch, we have a saying, we have, of course, the Shahada. And saying bye in Dutch is doei. And we have the Shahadui. So that means saying the Shahada and going and saying, okay, mashallah, you're Muslim now. Good luck, goodbye. That's what happens most often. So it's more like a convert joke. And we lose a lot of converts that way by improper, no assistance, or sometimes even worse, improper assistance. So I think like we have the center in Rotterdam, the convert center. Well, it's just a mosque, and we have a lot of. It's not like if you go there are only white guys. We are still, because there are not so many converts, it's like 50-50, but that's proportionally not normal if you look at our own community, because we're maybe like 1%, and if we go there, it's like 50%. But I think it's really important to have those centers where people know, okay, if I want to meet Dutch people, there's a huge, if I go there, I will meet them. So even we have people coming across all of the country just to make connection with people of their own cultural and ethnic background.
What's the name of the center in Rotterdam again, Maarten?
It's called Center Middenweg, Centrum de Middenweg.
Okay.
I will put it in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Yeah, mashallah. Because that's really, all what we're advocating for here at Islam for Europeans. Like someone, asked me, oh, do you want an all-white mosque? I'm like, no, we don't want an all-white mosque. Everyone would be allowed, and all Muslims would be allowed and invited, into a center like this. Because at the end of the day, even though we have cultural mosques all throughout Canada, they don't disallow any Muslims from coming there and praying there and fasting there and completing all of their religious obligations. Like even I'm originally from Windsor. Windsor is a mid-level city. It's got like 220,000 people. But in Windsor itself, you have a Turkish mosque on the outskirts of the city. You have a mosque that's predominantly South Asian, that's run by the Tablighi Jamaat. There's a Somali organization in Windsor. There's and you have your umbrella mosque and things like that. So yeah, I mean that's wonderful, and that's definitely what we're advocating for. It just something that helps us solve our basically our mandate, which is when someone converts to Islam, they have all their family members and all their community members are going to react differently. Some are going to be very positive towards it, some will be neutral, some will be very negative. And it's very important for converts to have those resources so you can dispel the negative myths and misconceptions. But like you said, a lot of like Native Europeans who have negative thoughts toward Islam, or even or neutral about it, they're very scared of even stepping inside a mosque or hearing the adhan. Like their blood pressure goes up like 20 points. Like I always used to say that the first time a Muslim hears the adhan is when they're born, and the first time a non-Muslim hears the adhan is the opening scene from The Exorcist. So so right off the bat, there's like a negative association with that. So having a center like this, where we can bring in our family members, where they can feel more comfortable as into going into a place where they're going to be the only Dutch person there, is definitely vital. I can see why like some of the more our brothers and sisters who come from other countries who feel more marginalized, why they, I guess, would not want to, wouldn't see, the utility in something like this, or, like it's something that they don't feel comfortable doing, because at the end of the day, it's not their family and community members. They would like to see the image of Islam improved, but at the same time, it's difficult for us to say to them, like, oh, try to give, like Dawah, try to be a better Muslim, when they've been experiencing like marginalization, and like they don't feel as comfortable in a European country. So it's we should be leading the way and helping that, but I can see why they don't want to do the same thing themselves, because it's asking a lot of them. Do you, in the Netherlands, is this kind of marginalized sentiment that that Muslims who have Dutch citizenship, who are coming from other countries, they don't feel like they're full members of Dutch society, compared to, say, maybe the UK or France? Or is the situation much better in the Netherlands? Do they feel more integrated there?
Well, it's definitely not as bad as in France.
Okay.
It's
Which isn't
quite
saying
bad.
much.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Not sure about the UK, because I've only been to London
No.
because my sister lives there. So I've seen a bit of the Muslim community there, but I always find it really hard to judge a country where I've been just like 2 or 3 times. So I have the idea that it isn't bad here.
Okay.
Like in Belgium, it's a small country. We speak Belgium is a bit strange. One half of the country speaks
Half
French, the other
half
half
Dutch.
the Dutch. But we know, especially it's like it's very close, and they're even a bit, there are more right problems, and the hijab is banned in schools. So it's not as bad as in surrounding countries. I have the idea, and it's just a guess because I haven't lived there. But of course, in the entirety of Europe, we see an increase of the anti-Islam, and we have a very prominent guy, Geert Wilders, from the PVV party, the Freedom Party. Well, he's famous for his anti-Islamic rhetoric. So there is discrimination, and a lot of Muslims, there's a real problem with integration. And I'm not talking about assimilation, but for example, the biggest community here are the Turks, and Turkish people, even when they're third, fourth generation, still think that one day they're going to go back to Turkey. And I don't think it doesn't even have to do with discrimination, it's their own nationalism. It's more
Right.
their culture, that not so much Dutch problem, because you see the same in all the Turkish communities in European countries.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is discrimination, and of course, thereby, a lot of Muslims feel disconnected from our society and not fully Dutch. And that's a thing that, especially at Centrum the Middenweg, we really try to promote.
Hmm.
Like I said, it's not like it's not a white person mosque, but it's a
Mm.
Dutch mosque. As we
Yeah,
say, it's
exactly.
like um, everybody who is here, most people are here are at least second generation. So we have to stop thinking that we're a Moroccan or a Turkish, or we are all Dutch people. We might have different cultural backgrounds, but if you're probably going to stay here. So let's focus on improving Islam in this country
Mm.
and contributing to this country and aligning and feeling Dutch
Yeah.
without having to set aside your own culture. Um, so yeah, I think we have it better here than some surrounding countries,
Hmm.
but it's not getting better. That's a problem, I think.
Yeah, I know. Like I mean, I'm not in Europe and never been to Europe, so I don't know what the pulse is like there, and that's something I want to do in the future, is to go to Europe and just see the situation on the ground. But I will say that, even here in Canada, that, like, I don't see this situation getting better until, we can think of alternative solutions. And the way we're headed, like, I feel like it's getting more and more marginalized. And part of that reason, I think, is because, the media is trying to polarize society more in the more, taking the most marginalized voices and making that the strongest voice in the Muslim community, even if, like, many Muslims don't agree with what they say. Like, the Western populations here, they see that, and they think, okay, this is what all Muslims think. And it's a really big problem. And on the other end of the spectrum, like the anti-Islam right, they, are associating nationalism or European identity with being anti-Islam. And the most extreme voices, they're going to get heard the most, and they're going to be given the biggest megaphone. And the problem is, the Muslims and the people who are on the left, they're going to think that those are the loudest voices amongst Europeans. So, unfortunately, the two extremes are getting the biggest megaphone in this, which is really unfortunate. But with what your Centrum, the Middenweg, what they're trying to do is trying to find the many voices who are in the middle, literally,
Yeah,
to come to, like, a better understanding. So, and I think that's the way forward. I mean, have you spoken or have had conversations with either Muslims who feel very marginalized, or with Dutch people who are on the far right, who like have these very anti-Islam sentiments? And have you been able to make any headway with them, or what's their general thoughts on the whole thing?
yeah, definitely. Well, I've spoken a lot because in the media, Muslims get there's a real anti-Muslim sentiment in the media.
Hmm.
So there's the biggest part, because I think, um, yeah, with every terrorist attack in Europe, not
Yeah.
because we didn't really have a big one in the Netherlands. Never. We
Okay.
one time guy
Alhamdulillah.
got shot, unfortunately,
Hmm.
but it's like the only big deal that happened, and there was only one death. So it's not like what happens in France and the UK, but like they're constantly bashing Islam, even when there's no terrorist activity or no, everything is our fault. So I spoke a lot with Muslims, especially with the youth. It's really difficult
Yeah.
if you're constantly seeing in every newspaper every week that you are bad and backward. So that's a real issue. Um, what's also really important, I think, is creating that inter-religious connection with other people. So if you only have Muslim friends and Muslim contacts, then it might be easier to dehumanize white people, for example.
Yeah.
Same as like the same other way around, because it's much like it's very unlikely that you don't have any white friends, but it's very likely that some white people in the Netherlands never maybe saw a Moroccan person but never interacted with them. So,
Yeah.
but it's also from our side because especially in Rotterdam where I live, it's so there are more immigrants in this city than ethnic Dutch people.
Oh,
It's one of
wow.
the few. Yeah, it's one of the few cities that has such a high diversity rate. So it is possible almost to get lost in immigrant society here in the Netherlands or in Rotterdam. But it's a bit of a different case. But I've spoken a lot because, of course, beards are getting more into fashion here in the Netherlands for quite a few years now. So when I don't say it, and when I'm not wearing a jalaba, just wearing normal clothes, people will not necessarily straight away think that I'm Muslim because I look like them. So the funny thing is I'm not hiding it, but I'm also not introducing myself when I see somebody for the first time. Hi, I'm Maarten, a Muslim. So the funny thing is that when you start to learn people, learning to get to know them, sometimes they feel themselves comfortable with you. All of a sudden, all of kind of racist talk comes out because they don't, even when they don't know. Especially in my professional life, I get it a lot. For example, when I worked in the hospital and stuff, there were quite a few because, like, I worked in anesthesia, so it's operation room, and yeah, surgeons are like it's a very white privileged professional group. It was quite funny because I'm not a doctor. I'm just I have a bachelor, but so the doctors are always at their own office, and all the supporting personnel is in a normal coffee room. So not all the doctors, when I started working at a new hospital, knew I was a Muslim. And all of a sudden, when we're like an all-white room, because of course we also had immigrants working there, but when we had an all-white group, all of a sudden some racist talk came out of it.
Yeah.
And it's always really funny because my fellow colleagues knew I was Muslim, and I always saw them like to the doctor, like, stop it.
I know.
So I've throughout the years I have a lot of conversation with basically racist people and anti-Islam, with anti-Islam sentiments, and I think also why it's important to have white communities, Muslim communities, is that connection, because especially when they knew me as like a professional, somebody who has a higher education, somebody who does his work well, and all of a sudden you found out that beard wasn't fashionable. They're much more open because they're shocked and they're amazed and they're confused. Well, how can you be Muslim? You're so smart. That's one of the funny how bad they look at Islam as backwards and stupid. And but it's not only. I think what's really important to know about Dutch culture, like that's very different from the UK. Like when I started doing Dawah, I went to the UK to look at I4E and how they did their Dawah, and they have those street tables in the street.
Yeah.
And I was so amazed that in the UK you can just go to some random businessman and in the center of London and just ask him about his religion. Because in the Netherlands, religion is really basically frowned upon. It's something you are basically it's something shameful. There's a really anti-religious sentiment in the Netherlands. We always say religion is for your living room, not for outside.
Yeah.
And it has its logical background because we had a lot of religious suppression and not like in the 60s and the 50s, and we broke free, and after that we were really anti-religious.
Yeah,
So
same thing in Quebec. Quebec was the same thing. They had it's called the Revolution Tranquille. It was like a quiet revolution where they basically just distanced themselves completely from the Catholic Church. And in fact, all the swear words in Quebec are religious words. So
yeah,
like every other place in the world, swear words are based off of, sex. Whereas in Quebec, all of it's, like they'll say tabernacle, which is like the tabernacle, and calice, which is the chalice, people drink wine from, and st, which is the host, that the
yeah,
body of Christ. That those are all swear words in Quebec.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's, I guess, in the
Quite
Netherlands is the
similar
same
then.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like what I wanted to mention, because religion in general is really looked down upon. And
Mhm.
it's funny, for example, when I'm openly Muslim and I'm not afraid to say it, it's funny how many closet Christians I always meet. If they say, "Oh, there's a guy at work who's openly religious. Oh, maybe I can talk with him even when I'm Christian." So I think it's really important for people to see that Islam is not something Arabic or something Turkish or something, and that's a religion that's open for everybody, and also that's not because that's basically the fear of the right is that Islam is going to demolish Dutch culture.
So is it so a lot of these things are interrelated, or if you look at it like a Venn diagram, like how much of it is, the fear of Islam itself in terms of its practices, whether they're true or not, or half truths, and how much of it is, how much of that fear in Dutch society is what they see as changing demographics, or is it tough to tease apart those two? Are there some, sorry, my cat's in the way. Are
No
there
problem.
some that where it's just all one, they just don't like Islam, but they have no problem with changing demographics, or is it a
No.
combination of the
That's a
two?
bit. Islam is being like there is the Netherlands has a big racism problem,
Mm,
and that's towards uh, all ethnicities that are
mm,
different than Dutch. But somehow Islam has become the scapegoat for the entire immigration problem.
mm. I see, because it's more
Um,
acceptable. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I think that's a good. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, because it's no problem to be openly anti-Islam.
Mm,
But for example, if Geert Wilders would, because like we have elections in March, and Geert Wilders' slogan is he wants to um, de-Islamicize the Netherlands and send Muslims back to their own country.
ah,
It would be unthinkable
mhm.
that he should say, "I want to send all the foreign people back, and I want
Yes.
to de-diversify the Netherlands."
I want to make the Netherlands more white, basically.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah,
impossible. So
it would be
basically, I think
impossible.
that Islam has been a lot in the news. So it's been like it's like the poster, the example of immigration, and it's acceptable to say I hate Islam, and it's
Mm.
not acceptable to hate I hate immigrants.
Right. Okay. I get it now. Okay. Okay. So that's how they're, I guess that's how the right is sort of steering it in the direction of, that the scapegoat is becoming Islam.
Yeah,
Yeah. I get it now. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. Because yeah, like a lot of these, like other nationalists on the, on the far right, they have, we've been finding that a lot of them have positive views towards Islam, even given all of the negative things around it that are either cultural practices or not true at all, or half truths, like female circumcision, and like well, I guess polygamy is true, but I don't think it's. I mean, it's allowed in Islam, but it's not to the there are restrictions put on it, or you have to be able to treat all of your wives equally, and it's like in most cases, men should only be marrying one. That's another example. Or lies like like in Islam, both if there's a rape case, both the victim and the perpetrator are both killed, which is not true either. And I guess, other misconceptions that like, we don't, like a lot of people, they think that, if you're a Muslim living in a non-Muslim country, that Islam is what you should be following, and you shouldn't be following the laws of the land because that's kufr. When the consensus of most of the scholars is that when you're in a non-Muslim country, you're basically signing a contract with that country that you're going to obey all of the laws, as long as they're in line with Islamic teachings, and that's basically respecting your contract. So if you're breaking the speed limit, you're disobeying Allah. And if there are laws that are against Islam, like for example the hijab ban and stuff like that, Muslims, if they have the ability to, they should be making hijrah. And I think that's, if I'm not mistaken, the consensus of most of the scholars. I kind of on a tangent there, but like even with all these misconceptions that the far right has, like they still say that there are things in Islam that are redeemable, that are positive, that they want to find out about. And I think it's, when you tell Muslims this, some of them can't even fathom it. They just think that when they think of, like the conservative right, they think of people like Geert Wilders and Tommy Robinson and Jean-Marie Le Pen, where like they can't see anything positive in Islam. So have you met people like this on the far right who see the positive things in Islam, or commonalities with what Muslims practice? Or
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I have a very funny example. We have we have a Muslim activist, a Dutch convert, but he also rides motorcycles. And
Okay.
yeah, it's really funny. So also with the same thing as him, he has a big beard, but he also wears well, not extremely. It's not. He isn't wearing leather jackets, but he has a chopper. So if you see him, he looked more like a biker initially because he's white. You should than a Muslim. And the funny thing is, he gives lectures and about Islam, and more than a few times, he even had bikers attend his lectures. For example, when there's spicy subjects, because I can remember one of the biggest mosques in Rotterdam. I used to be active there in a Dawah commission, and we had a lecture about terrorism given by him. And the funny thing is, there was like 2 or 3 biker guys, like full. They're even like real biker guys, like they were in a club. They had like their I don't know, the body warmers, the leather jackets on with the insignia and stuff.
In North America, we call them the Hell's Angels.
Yeah, I didn't know which club they were, but they're basically Hell's Angels with tattoos and piercings and leather jackets. And it was so funny just seeing them sitting in a mosque on a chair, listening to a guy with a beard.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are many, and of course we have the famous Dutch converts from the Freedom Party. Like most recently, you did an interview on the Met Mamluks with Joram van Klaveren.
Yeah.
They're rare. It's not. If you're not active in a mosque or active in this field, you will not see it. It's like it's not an open discussion.
No.
That some right guys are, because basically, if you look at the media and the TV, right means anti-Islam.
Yeah.
That's just basically the sentiment. But of course, like you said, if you speak with people one-on-one, when you find an open door and you start to compare values, they're often very surprised to see that that they can fight themselves into Sharia laws, and that's quite funny and often a very big surprise for them. So I think it's a really even if you look at political active Muslims in the Netherlands, they're always at the left side. I find a discussion with the right, with where their fears are of their culture and what they value. I think if you just say, okay, guys, we basically want the same. We want to have stable families. We want to reduce crime. Yes, it's true. We have immigrants because it's a socioeconomic problem, not because they're immigrants. It's because most poor people, lower socioeconomic classes brings with them troubles. because we also see in like farmer villages where there are low low social economic, the white guys that do crime. Not saying that if you're poor you're automatically a criminal, but you know what I mean. So, but basically just saying, okay, we want to reduce crime as well. The guys you're speaking of that you find problematic, we find them problematic as well. And I often see that it's like a knee-jerk reaction that when, for example, they're speaking about problematic issues where, for example, one ethnicity is over. For example, in the Netherlands, they even call them the Mokro mafia, the Moroccan mafia.
Oh.
There are numbers that we see that Moroccan groups are sometimes overrepresented in crime numbers, considering their numbers.
They say the
here.
same thing about the UK with the grooming gangs. You know, like that's one of the contentions that like these grooming gangs are mostly South Asians, and then usually Muslims will you know snap back and say, you know, well, there's also white gangs that are doing the same thing. Yeah. But
and I think the problem is, and of course, it's being abused and overreacted. But if we look at some numbers, why aren't there so many Turks or so many Suriname, all the ethnicities we have here? Why are these numbers over? So and so if you see, for example, a Moroccan guy saying, "Yeah, we have a Moroccan problem," what Gil Wils always says is like being stoned to death almost on social media.
Yeah.
Because how can you? And I think as Muslims, it's a big opportunity to say, "Okay, guys, we want to fix this. Islam wants to fix this problem." And after you've said that, then it's possible for you to bring context and say, "Okay, it's not they're not like this because they're Moroccan. It's a socioeconomic problem."
They're not like this because they're Muslim either.
So I think that's very important to show the rights that the things they're afraid of. Basically, Islam tries to solve for them. So instead of seeing as an danger, we can be an ally.
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, you know, we don't want to see Muslim women being harassed on the street. We don't want, you know, their hijabs being ripped off. You know, we don't want them to walk down the street in fear, you know, walking around in an all European neighborhood, you know, but we don't want to see European women being, you know, assaulted either. And a lot of these women who end up, you know, joining these nationalist parties, you know, they say, yeah, I was, you know, they grabbed my butt on the street, which is, you know, completely not allowed in Islam. But a lot of these, that's one of the misconceptions that we have to dispel, that Islam doesn't allow this kind of behavior. And, you know, well, they might come back and say, well, yeah, well, that's like the no true Scotsman fallacy. Like if Islam is so great in preventing this behavior, then why are they still doing it? And we shouldn't go from that angle. We should say, you know, if Islam really truly teaches that, then the goal should be better Islamic education.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the best way around it. But no, it's really fascinating that, you know, even though, you know, you're in the Netherlands, I'm in Canada, we kind of see the same thing, that it's kind of the same dynamic in that, you know, when you get involved with Dawah and you're talking to people who are on the conservative right, there are people on the conservative right who see the positive things in Islam. Even they can look past, you know, all these things about grooming gangs and rape and FGM and things like that, and see the positive things in it. The challenge for us will be to dispel those misconceptions that were originally there, and also, you know, saying that, look, I mean, the you know, like the Muslims who are here, they want to, you know, resolve or, you know, make these issues or resolve these issues, you know, and better. They, you know, we're in agreement with that. You know, we can come to an agreement and work on these things together. But like you said, it's a very these discussions don't happen in the open. You know, they even, you know, with these you know, people on the far extreme right who, you know, who are not in the Geert Wilders crowd, you know, they're being canceled by the day. They're being, you know, like cut off of YouTube. And even entertaining a discussion with them online will probably get us canceled as well. So, you know, and we want, you know, we're just starting out here. So that makes it even more difficult. So yeah, that's just some of the challenges going forward. But it's fun. I'm trying to think of some other examples where that happened. I mean, I've seen, like there was this meme going around of white Sharia, like this guy, but they said, but they had the same misconceptions about Islam as the Geet Wilders crowd, but they used it in like a positive context, like,
Yeah.
oh, we need to like oppress our women again, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, um, I guess let's steer this interview in another direction. How long we've been talking? Oh, since about an hour. Okay, you're still good to keep going, Maarten? Or
Yeah, I'm fine.
okay, good. So let's get into the issue of the issue of women in Islam, European non-Muslim women, Muslim women, and the kind of the challenges in sort of bringing our sisters into the conversation as well. Because a lot of the times on the far right, they think, why are so many women converting to Islam? Because for them, like almost all of their get-togethers is almost exclusively male. And it's for them, like they say, we're here offering, strong men, and we can get women pregnant and take care of their but to them, Islam, like has been able to, when you see converts, most of the converts to Islam are women.
Yeah.
So a
Same
lot
here.
of that is, they don't understand how Islam gives balance to male-female relations, because they only see what the anti-Islam conservatives have been saying about Islam, is that it oppresses women and stuff like that. So how do we get our sisters more involved in our organization at Islam for Europeans, or just in general?
Good question. Of course, because of it's more difficult for women to go out in the public,
Yeah.
especially public speaking, because there's an inherent Islamic side of it, about promoting modesty and stuff, but also, unfortunately, for example, in the Netherlands, we have some active female. For example, in the political sphere, atmosphere, we have this is the first time this year we have a local party in Rotterdam, NIDA, that's been going on for years. And in Rotterdam, the local politics are very successful, alhamdulillah, for the small power they have. But now they're going national this year, and the number 2 on their list is a white Muslim woman. It was also one of the big parties, GroenLinks. It's a leftist party who had a fairly highly placed Moroccan hijabi woman. And we see that when a female goes out in the public, they're often getting scrutinized by anti-Islam people, but also our own community. Yeah. So you're basically attacked from both. If you do something wrong, you're either getting pushed back by anti-Islam or pro-Islam, and very often both. So I think it's also a problem in our community, a cultural problem, that we need women to step up, but a lot of women are afraid because we're so critical on them.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest part, because we see, at least in the Netherlands, for example, at the Centrum, the Middenweg, we have live streams and such, and we always try to have parts where there are women talking about women's stuff during the live streams, but we also get so much pushback about that. So it's difficult. I think it's a cultural issue with our community that somehow I think, and often the biggest pushback is by our own community.
Yeah.
So it's so dangerous for a woman, and also for her partner, especially if she isn't married yet. Is a bigger problem, because who wants to marry that wife, that woman? So I don't have a clear answer to it. You have to have a lot of confidence as a woman, and the proper support of at least the person who's bringing you on the public, for them to really speak out and contribute to the discussion. Because
Yeah.
We have a problem in our community when we let women speak.
Yeah, and like I've seen so many, Canadian converts, female converts, where they're like you said, they're caught between, like their own community and the new Muslim community, especially when it comes to hijab, because a lot of these women are in situations where they're living with their family, and if their family sees them with hijab, they'll get kicked out of the house, or they'll get disowned,
Yeah,
and a lot of them just aren't ready to take that step. But when you convert to Islam, like there's this expectation that you're gonna want to wear it eventually, or right off the bat, and a lot of I've seen it's just too much pressure for them to take. And it's been really tragic, and we end up pushing them away. Even if they do end up wearing the headscarf, it's not up to the standards that the Muslim community wants. So this happens in mosques. I've seen where female converts, they're trying to dress as modestly as they can. They'll come in with jeans and like like a shirt that covers their arm, their entire body, and a headscarf, and still they'll get criticized because they're not wearing like a jilbab. And that's a lot of these women are getting ostracized from their family to begin with, and now they're getting ostracized from the Muslim community as well, and a lot of them just won't even go back to the mosque again.
yeah,
And there's also this kind of like they'll convert, and like you said, they'll have all this zeal when they first convert, and they'll want to wear the hijab, but sometimes the pressure is just so much that they stop wearing it, and that's when like it just becomes an avalanche, and they end up leaving Islam. That's I've seen it before, and it's been very tragic. And in the meantime, you have a lot of Muslim women, and I don't want to denigrate them or anything, but they're not even wearing hijab at all. They're wearing like traditional Western clothing. And I'm not saying that to denigrate them. I'm just saying, if they can have a Muslim identity, but these convert women, from whatever background they're from, like they're trying the best that they can, at least say like like we understand your struggle. So yeah, have you seen that as well too, Maarten, where it's just been difficult just to keep female converts like within the fold of Islam or in the Muslim community?
um, difficult question
Yeah,
because I don't interact with women a
exactly.
lot.
Me too.
Yeah, so that's difficult. What I'm and I might have a blurred vision because I'm in such a special situation
Mm,
at the center. There's no center like this in the Netherlands somewhere
right.
else.
Yeah.
Because, for example, the chairman of the mosque we have is a female,
Mm.
is a Greek convert,
Oh,
um, and so yeah, I'm not in a normal mosque. I'm not in a normal environment, and I'm always being active in Dawah. So
yeah.
um, the areas where I am, I we do the good. We try to do it well, and
Yeah.
of course we hear the stories of people coming to us of
Mm.
all the bad stories. So I don't know how many females join Islam and leave. I
Mhm.
don't know if they're much worse than the white people than the men. I might even if I look. I think I've seen more men leave than women because women tend to be more. If you just look at every event, the female side is always more tentative, bigger numbers,
Mm.
and um, in most organizations or mosque that give room for women to contribute, we always see that women are the most active.
Mm.
You also see it in MSA student associations that the females are most of the times the most active and involved in charity and unpaid labor. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's difficult. I think the biggest issue is we have to give them room to do their own thing, and
Yeah.
that's often not happening.
Yeah, no, it's definitely essential. Yeah, and it's difficult to analyze and research all of this. I mean, the more part of the problem we have here at I4E is that we don't have any hard data, and we're just going
Yeah,
off based on anecdotal
guessing.
evidence. Yeah, and then on top of that, we have to look at attrition rates as well. So when you do any study, it's only the people that participate in the study that are going to be
Yeah,
involved. So it's difficult to even get our hands on people who converted to Islam, but then they left the Muslim community or Islam altogether, and just sort of ask them, what went wrong. But those are but I think for the most part, I mean, like a center like this is very, a great idea, and it should be a template for
Yeah,
any Muslim community in the West, or even not just in, like countries where it's predominantly European, but any country in which Muslims are the minority, whether that's Mexico or Japan or Peru. I mean, you're going into a totally different culture, and converts are going to be in a totally different situation than you are. And like we need to, Muslim communities need to show, the greater population that yes, you can be Muslim, and you can filter all the things that are within your culture through an Islamic lens, and that's going to give a better image for the people there in that country.
yeah. I think if we have more centers like this, like for example, in every big city in the Netherlands,
Mm-hmm.
um, Islam would really change because we have so now during Corona, strange times, but
Mm-hmm.
we almost had like weekly. We had weekly shahadas, and we had a special team that picks them up and supports them. So I think if every big city would have a center like this, I think it would be a quite a big, because we have a big impact for one mosque.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem now is lately is that because our mosque is paid by external finance from another
Yeah.
country, and recently, like 2 years ago, the Netherlands banned. Well, they not banned it, but they made it so difficult, it's almost impossible to get foreign funding.
Mm.
So that's and the funny thing is the big like for example Diyanet, the Turkish, basically it's part of the government of Turkey. They can still do their own thing, but the small mosques are really the real victim of this new regulation.
Yeah, that's another issue too. Is funding. I mean, I've seen before, even with when mosques are trying to have programs to help out converts, all the funding comes from, like either overseas
Yeah,
or funders who are uh, born into Islam, so they have their own idea of how to help people out, and so a lot of times the funding, I don't want to say it goes to waste, but it gets spent in the wrong places.
yeah,
So, part of the challenge is going to be as we build, Muslim communities in the West for people who are ethnically European. A lot of us are just in really poor situations. A lot of us are living paycheck to paycheck. And before we
yeah,
started recording, like the economic situation is not going to get any better for the brothers who convert, like who are trying to, like, and eventually they're going to have to start supporting themselves and their wife and their family. And that's difficult to do when it's so difficult to get, that first job when you're 18 years old, and find a job without having all of this school debt. So that's going to be another challenge as well. Was that a challenge for you when you is educate is post-secondary education, is university subsidized in the Netherlands? Can you go to university for
it
free
is
or?
subsidized. It's not free,
Okay.
but it's affordable.
Okay.
Um, basically, you pay 2,000 euros a
Mm.
year, so that's very different from like the UK. You pay 10K. So
Wow.
um, we used to even get like a monthly fee,
Mm.
student finance. They stopped that. It's not so. A lot of people still. We have like rent. Well, they're not interest free, but they have like a very low interest, like zero, not something, not zero, but zero dot something,
Mm.
very low.
Yeah.
So we have student loans. So yeah, it's difficult if you live at home and your family is not financially dependent on you. It is possible to have like a secondary job, just like for 1 or 2 days in a week, and
Mm.
have a full-time education and pay everything and not having to take a loan. It
Oh,
is
great.
possible. It is
Yeah.
very possible. But of course, a lot of, especially our community, come from poor backgrounds.
Mm,
They might have to support the family, and then we see a lot of students use loans. But if you live at home, or if you're even like when I was at when I left, I was living at a student flat. Me and my wife both worked like two days a week in the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and we studied full time, and we didn't need to take loans.
I see. Oh, wow. That's great.
So it is do it's hard, but it is doable.
Yeah.
And that's for example, if you can do it, you won't have like huge loans like in the US or in the UK. You get like 50, 60, 100K for a
Oh, I know.
normal. It's crazy if I heard
It is crazy.
hear those stories.
Yeah, no, it is crazy. It's even worse in the U.S. Canada's getting pretty bad too in terms of how much you have to pay for education.
What's like a normal student loan if you're finished?
4-year degree here in Ontario would probably run you about $20,000-$30,000 Canadian at least. Yeah.
So that's only for the college fee, basically.
Yeah, and that's just college fees. That doesn't count like all living expenses and things like that. So,
okay, yeah.
And that's still subsidized. So it's still not as expensive as it is in the United States. But it's still, yeah. And then a lot of these degrees are really useless. I mean,
so basically the max that you here have is like 8,000, 9,000.
Wow. That's
the max that you get.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to buy books and all the other expenses, but yeah, it's a huge difference. Like we can do 4 years what you can do in 1 year.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we want to make it sustainable. We want, our members to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and, not have to take welfare and actually be a positive contribution. Like even if it's the point where you just have your own apartment or a house, and then, in the, like then you can have your own iftars, with other converts from that community. And build those social bonds. I mean, when I was in Windsor, I got invited to Pakistani iftars at their houses. I got invited to by the Bosnian community. We had iftars in their houses. So not everything has to occur at a mosque. I mean, like I said, people are afraid to be around that, but I think for us, having, those physical third spaces is going to be important moving forward. And that way, the Muslim community doesn't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on us. They can spend their money on, helping out their own community, and they don't have to babysit us as much anymore. So.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with if you want to grassroots fund it in their own country, is that the good thing about the center is that was the whole idea, is like we build a mosque in a way with the culture that we find appropriate, we think that's good. If you don't like it, don't come.
Yeah.
And the problem is with like 90%, 99% of all the mosques here in the Netherlands is that they're all funded by the community. So basically, it's the first generation that built the mosque, and they now claim it, and they want to remain. They want to keep it a Turkish mosque, Moroccan mosque, or whatever.
Yeah.
And basically, it's their own. It is their right because they build it. It's their building, but our community is not large. The white Muslim community isn't large enough to fund a lot of mosques.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
That's the problem, and that's why it's really sad, is because unfortunately a lot of wealthy Arabs really like to spend their money on white people, but now the Dutch government denies us the chance. So it's a difficult situation, and I'm very curious because there are getting more and more converts. So on some way I'm thinking, okay, if those first generation immigrants that are often poor and only coming to work manage to build a mosque, wouldn't it be able to do it with more white people that most of the times more well off than especially the first generation immigrants that came here? So isn't it possible for us to get our own mosque? I don't know. And of course it's not necessary, like you said, like I said, we don't want a white mosque,
right?
We want at least not a mosque where we're not allowed to do our own activities, because I think it's very healthy to have activities aimed at white converts, just for Pacific culture.
Well, I keep saying this. I mean, like, the best way to lower Islamophobia in Britain is to have a proper dartboard in every masjid basement.
Yeah,
But they don't see it that way. They think, like a dartboard would be something Western or British, and like it's, even though there's nothing haram about darts. I mean, and I know darts is bigger in the Netherlands there. I don't know if I'm a huge dart fan myself.
yeah.
So even just setting up a dartboard, bringing your uncle who doesn't like Muslims very much, I think it would make him or your aunt, feel a bit more comfortable, and where you can play a game of 501, like and associate something positive with the mosque.
That's very true, because, for example, the Dutch are known to be a little bit greedy, and like immigrants have a running joke that when you go to a Dutch guy, you always get one cookie, one biscuit when you get coffee. And the funny thing is, it's kind of true.
Yeah.
Um, and for example, it's really normal in Dutch culture. For example, if you're a child and you play with a friend, that the mom says, "Okay, you have to go home now. We're going to eat." Like, and that's, if you tell it to an Arab or some other Turk, it's like, it's almost an insult to, if you don't stay for dinner if you're there. So
Yeah.
the funny thing is, we see that what works really well at the center is that we're very generous. So even with our neighbors, we have neighbors that just every Juma they come in because they know they can get free coffee.
Right.
But it's like we have a very, very friendly connection with our neighbors. And the funny thing is, our mosque is placed at a site it's getting very gentrified. So a lot of well-off, white, high-educated people are starting to live there. Young people, also a bit more open often. So we get very fun interactions with just people that are walking their dog, and we just give them a cup of coffee for on the way.
Okay.
So it's really fun, and we have a really good connection with the neighborhood. And
Yeah.
I'm very curious how Islam is going to develop in the next 10 years, because it came from far. It like, I've been Muslim for almost 10 years. When I started out, there was one mosque in Rotterdam that had a Dutch khutbah.
Oh wow.
And that was rare in our country. Like, the imam that did my shahadas, it's a Indonesian, but he comes from Suriname. He was the first imam to preach in Dutch.
Wow. And this was when?
Like 50, 20 years ago. And the Muslims have been here for 50, 60 years.
Wow.
So Dutch content is new, but it's gone so quickly in those 10 years. Like, it's now it's easy. Every mosque has Dutch live streams. We have lessons. We have online lessons. We have Dutch education. We also have an accredited university right now with Islamic traditional knowledge. They offer bachelor's, masters, and it went so quick. Like, we've been here for 60 years, and all of a sudden, in 10 years, it developed a lot. But unfortunately, currently, we also have the far right and the right anti-Islam movement moving very quickly. So, and we also still have a lot of problems, because it's still all loose groups, and working together, especially with other ethnicities, like trying to get Turkish and Moroccan mosques to work together is like impossible.
Yeah.
We have a lot of difficulty. So it's really, I find it really interesting. Are we going to finally pick up the pace and keep up this improvements? And are we able to push back to the anti-Islam movement, or are we just basically delivered by the tide, and hope we have to hope that the anti-Islam, that they find another scapegoat soon? So it's yeah,
just pick on somebody else.
Yeah, maybe the war with the Chinese start or something, and or with the Russians, and we can forget about the Muslims again. So I'm very, very curious how, at least in Rotterdam and nationwide, it is improving. We see
Hmm.
more religious people. We see much more opportunities to learn about Islam for Muslims and non-Muslims.
Hmm.
Um, but we're basically fighting as a very small group against a large group that's actively trying to work against us.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, just a lot of challenges, but I mean, we have to start somewhere, and I think the center you're talking about is a great idea. I'd love to visit it someday once
You're welcome.
coronavirus.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'd love to come, and it should definitely be used as a template. But I think we're looking from a visionary perspective on our group that like it's just creating the idea of the concept that Europeans can be Muslim too and keep their culture, and by that they would create their own sub communities, just like like you said, there's a Turkish sub community in the Netherlands, there's a Moroccan Muslim sub community in the Netherlands, and they're very distinct, and like you said, it's tough to get them to collaborate. So all we're asking is that for the indigenous population there, if they had their own sub community that was Muslim, they would inshallah come to it like a magnet, and actually bring back the cultures and traditions that were lost due to like globalization and stuff. I mean, what are the iftars like there? Is it a mixture? Is it like a potluck? Is it mostly Arabic food? Is it Dutch food? Is it
Yeah, good question. I think still the funny thing is the Dutch barely eat Dutch food anymore.
yeah.
Yeah, because yeah, a lot of Dutch people eat Indonesian and
Yeah.
basically we found out that our cuisine is a little bit lacking. So and basically all the good food we have is basically French kitchen. So
Mm.
um, our Dutch eating habits have been slowly declining throughout the years. So there's not a lot of Dutch food. I don't think I ever saw Dutch food like
Mm.
potatoes and broccoli or something at an iftar.
Do
I
you
never
think
saw that.
if you brought your grandmother or grandfather to like a Dutch iftar and brought back all that food, it would be it would I don't know, it would improve their idea of
No, I think they're more happy with Moroccan or Turkish
oh,
food
okay, never mind.
than Dutch food.
Right, no, it's true.
Um,
And the inverse happened too in many Muslim countries. I mean, I don't know if you have a Somalian community there in the Netherlands, but
yeah, we do.
oh,
Yeah,
okay. But if you go to Somali restaurants, pasta is on the menu. It's a mixture of Somali, and they included Italian food in that. So it's the only African cuisine where they add in spaghetti.
yeah,
So, but no, this was really good. Maarten, let's see, it's 10. Oh, we've been talking for an hour and a half.
yeah.
Closing remarks. Did you have any other things that you still wanted to talk about, or
No, I think we covered a lot.
no, we
I
did.
would say if you're in the Netherlands and everybody else, please come visit Centrum de Middenweg.
Yeah.
We're open for everybody, and at least in the Netherlands, it's really a template for success in Islam success for Islam in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a very healthy setup,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it can also work in other European countries.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I think, of course, this is really it's important to have these type of discussions to normalize that. Like we have the Moroccan mosque, we have Turkish mosques. Why is it so frowned upon for white Muslims to group together? Somehow it's being it's
Mm-hmm.
being it has some negative tint. I don't know where it comes from, but
Yeah.
I think we have to normalize that, as do every other cultures have. We also feel the need to spend time, not solely, but we
Mm-hmm.
have to. We like to interact with people who share our culture, our background. It's just easier. Um,
Yeah.
and I always see it as it's like a recharge, um, to be able to connect better with other cultures.
Yes, absolutely. And like I think it, like you said, it's a controversial idea, but at the end of the day, I think both sides who, like have this antagonistic relationship, they'll be able to see that there's positives for something like this for both of them. On the left, their main grievances are, we feel marginalized. We don't feel like we're part of European society. But if we had this, this would alleviate a lot of their fears. And, they imagine they, like marginalized Moroccan or Turkish Muslims, like they just come to the Netherlands. They don't feel like they're a part of Dutch society. And then they go to a center like this where they see, Dutch people, but they're all their brothers and sisters. That would, alleviate a lot of their fears. And if they get, if they meet Islamophobic people on the street, or if they start asking them questions or getting angry with them, they can say, look, this is the Centrum, the Middenweg, go there, and talk to them. And then on the right, they're worried about losing their culture. They're worried about, losing, not being Netherlands, not being Dutch anymore. But seeing a center like this, they could see, oh, wow, I guess Muslims really do care about our culture. So, I think there's positives on both ends. But I think, we have to, sort of rein it in and say, look, like, I know the idea sounds controversial, but, we're trying to, alleviate tensions on both sides. And, we're not trying to be extreme on either side. I just think that this idea, this template, can be the best thing moving forward for Europe and the Muslim world as a whole. So,
yeah, I totally agree.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I really enjoy diversity. I find it really enjoyable as a friend of a lot of backgrounds, but everybody has this innate feeling of belonging, of something they grew up in. And it's known, that it's familiar, and one doesn't exclude the other.
Yeah, and one challenge I have for Centrum the Middenweg, or one suggestion, it would be so cool if you, I don't know if you can do this in the basement or whatever, but set up a proper dartboard and see if we can invite Michael van Gerwen and Raymond van Barneveld to have a match there.
That's a really, we don't have a basement, but we have plenty room in the lounge area. So I think it's a very good idea. I'll pitch it to the management.
Yeah. And then I like I said, I'm not in Europe, but I'm a huge dart fan. So it'd be a good idea.
We should clip this part. So clip this part so I can send it to the mosque board.
Yeah, and dartboards are very cheap. Like to set a proper one up, it would only cost like a couple $100 with like a chalkboard.
I think even less.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So wonderful. Yeah. Okay. So I guess we'll stop it here for now, Maarten. But just a few things. We're Islam for Europeans. Please subscribe to our channel below. We're trying to build up this idea. And just get the word out. And for those in the Netherlands, it's Centrum de Middenweg. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Centrum de Middenweg.
Middenweg.
Rotterdam.
Okay. And did you want to give a shout out on where to find it, or a phone number, or a website address, or email?
Well, if Dutch people are listening, they can just Google it. We have Facebook, we have a website. If you just Google it, Centrum de Middenweg, mosque, maybe at mosque, then you'll find it, inshallah. And it's also very fun to know if a Dutch guy is listening, for like immigrants, for expats. We also have currently have two khutbahs, and the second one is always in English, because we also have a lot of expats that attend our mosque.
Okay. Mashallah. Great. Awesome. Okay. I think we'll wrap it up for today. I'm Robert Dufour from Islam for Europeans. Thank you to our guest, Maarten Van Elst. And we will be signing off. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.